I'm going to talk a little bit about another data set, another data product, which is our COVID-19 tracking data. And so the 33 national waves, and I'll talk a little bit about how these came about. So we started tracking the pandemic on March 10, 2020. And then so the first survey went in the field March 10 and was in the field until the end of March. And then after that, we started we started a rhythm of 2 weeks periodicity. So what we did is in March, we started asking people if they were interested in participating in a long-term tracking survey. So, and then after April 1, we only asked people who had said that they were interested. So, and as you will see soon, the number of people consented sort of went up after April. So the sample went sort of grew a little bit over time. We followed people every 2 weeks until about February 2021. Then we went to a 4-week periodicity that lasted until July of that year. And since then, we do it roughly every 4 months. And the reason why we reduced the frequency is really just because it became very costly to do that, but also because sort of the most intense period, if you like, of the COVID pandemic was really this early period. So there was a real interest in following people over time. And the way it was set up is in the 2-week periodicity, we invited different respondents every day. So every day, 1/14 of the sample was asked to answer surveys. So you get this continuous information stream about how people experience the pandemic, what they were doing, their protective measures, etc. And here you see the dates, and the last one was in the field in December. It just came out of the field, so these data are also available. And we're planning a new wave roughly end of March, early April. But in addition to the national surveys, we also have LA County data. So what we did in LA County was that in addition to them every 2 weeks, people who lived in LA County, they were asked to do another survey in the off week. So they were actually surveyed every week. So we have weekly data for LA County. So 1 week they would do the national survey, and then the other week they would do a shorter survey with specific questions for LA County. And that was partly used by the LA County medical department for surveillance purposes. They wanted to know really what's going on. And in the beginning, there was just very little information at all what was going on, and they used the data for that purpose. So as the result of that is that we have 57 waves of LA County data. And of course, the LA County data are then 29 national waves and then 28 off-week shorter waves. And after that, the LA County respondents only responded to the national data, just like the national survey, just like everyone else. And this is just an example of the way we post the data. We've done this through July 2021. So every night we would upload the new data, and here you see a graph of vaccination intentions, and later on whether they actually got vaccinated. But there's thousands of these graphs. You will still see them, but we have not updated them since the summer of 2021. So by now these are sort of more of historic interest maybe than anything else. So the data are widely available. Anyone can use them, and as I said earlier, they get posted immediately after they come out of the field. You see the link. So what we ask is that, so the number of groups using it is about 500 or so worldwide. We have certainly over 1,000 researchers using it. And here you see the response and the response rate. So as I said, the first wave was done for everyone in the UAS, but then after April 1, we only surveyed people who had consented. And it took a while for people to consent. So, some people would only consent like mid-April. So they were not in the first wave, but they were in the second wave, or people were in the third wave. So if you look at the lines there, the red line is response rates. And then the blue line is the number of respondents. And if you look at the red line, you see that response rate sort of trended down a little bit to about 70% at the end. The blue line remains constant because at the same time, the number of people who had consented to participate went up. So the response rates were down, but then the sample that we were drawing from went up, and it sort of ended up with being pretty much a horizontal line. And at the end, you see the line creeping up, and that's because these are the last waves where we now interview everyone in the UAS, so that the absolute numbers go up. But moreover, since we keep the service in the field longer, you get higher responses. I mean, we send more reminders. The longer you keep a survey in the field, the more response you have. So the response rate and the number of responses has gone up after we started doing this every 4 months, and that will sort of continue this way. Here is some indication of how often people responded to the survey. So as you can see, about 2,700 respondents have responded to all surveys we have done so far. And then we have a slightly, then we have a number who did like one survey less than the total. So you can see the distribution. So you have a big chunk of people who did all the surveys, but not surprisingly, every now and then people skip a survey, and this is the distribution of the number of surveys that people have done. And some people, of course, have done only one because the panel is growing. So new respondents, once they're in the panel, they can participate. So some of these are just new respondents and they have only done their first survey. Generally, one of the things I think generally with surveys, that there are not many benchmarks to see how well you're doing in reproducing national data. So in this case, we have one because the CDC keeps track of the number of people getting vaccinated. And there's a paper that came out in Nature a while ago that looks at that, and then also looks at how well the Ipsos panel, which is really the knowledge panel, does in tracking the number of people who get vaccinated at any time after the vaccines became available. And that's really graphed here. But then we also added our own data because we also followed whether people vaccinated. And it's a little hard to distinguish the various lines, but the point is essentially all these lines are on top of each other. So both Ipsos and our data are very close to what the CDC has in its administrative data. So data access, look for the COVID-19 tab. It's on the website. Marco may actually have pointed to it, but you can easily find it. The way to get access to the data is a little different from other data sets because we ask people to fill out a proposal form. And what it means is that we ask you to write a couple of sentences about what you're going to do with the data. Now, we're not going to look at that. Okay, so we're not going to screen or say, well, you shouldn't do that. But we do add it to the database. So once you have access, you can see what everyone else is doing. So the only reason why we're asking this is to give everyone a sense of what everyone else is doing. So hopefully that helps a little bit in reducing overlap, that not two groups are going to do exactly the same thing. Or maybe once you see that, you see a group that's doing things similar to what you're doing, and you can get in touch with them and say, well, maybe we can do things together. So this is purely informational. It's not a screening device of any sort. But once you have done that, you have access to the data, and you can download the longitudinal data. So all the data are in a longitudinal file. So there's really no point in downloading the individual data. And as a matter of fact, I think they're still embargoed. But it does, not for any particular reason, but there's no benefit in using the individual data because everything is in longitudinal data. What I find extremely useful as a user is the crosswalk, which is just a big Excel file that has every wave, all the variables. So if you want to have a quick overview of what's in the data and what's in every wave, you just go to the crosswalk and you can see what's in there. And then there is a longitudinal file, and there is a data description. So once you download that, it should be very easy to use the data. Moreover, the data can then be linked to contextual data. And later on, I'll talk about contextual data a little more, how this works. But you can link it directly to things about, for example, infection rates in certain areas or local policies and other things that you want to use in order to understand people's behavior and what you see over time. And that's really it. So this is just an invitation to use data as much as you can. And as I said, we have many groups using it, but there's always room for more. Thank you.